What happens when the hope of an entire nation boils down to a single kick? In a Brazil suffocated by dictatorship and censorship, football was the only collective escape, and one man carried the emotional weight of millions. But what if this moment, awaited for weeks, nearly ended in catastrophic failure and humiliation, revealing the most insane pressure ever applied in sports history? To understand how a mere sporting event transformed into a national cry for relief and a profound social landmark, we must return to the very peak of this collective madness, the instant the ball stopped at the penalty spot and history was about to be written or eternally postponed. This is the story of Pelé's 1000th goal, which occurred at the Maracanã Stadium on November 19th, 1969. On that tense day, the official count was over 65,000 people squeezed into the stadium, but it is estimated that nearly 100 million. Brazilian hearts stopped simultaneously for less than 20 seconds. It wasn't just a simple match against Vasco, it was the ultimate nerve test for the king. Facing off against the defiant goalkeeper, Andrada, ready to turn glory into a farce. Witness the trajectory of the only minute that stopped Brazil, November 19th. Today, there's history. In the Maracanã, on that night of November 19th, 1969, the silence was more deafening than any cheer ever heard. The clock stopped, the country stopped. After 12 years and 999 goals, the expectation on Pelé's shoulders was no longer human. It was historical. He walked. 70,000 people in the stadium, and an estimated 40 million Brazilians, glued to their radios and televisions, awaited the pinnacle of a career that had already rewritten football. This was not just a game. It was political theater during the harshest years of the military dictatorship. The goal was meant to be a national catharsis. Pelé had to score. If he failed, that failure would perhaps become the most remembered of all. The tension was so immense that, in the 3 minutes following the foul call, the São Paulo Stock Exchange registered a drop of 0.2%, a micro-financial panic reflecting the national stress. And then, the whistle, Pelé against Andrada. The Argentine goalkeeper, the unlikely villain, moved. The shot came, not powerful, but placed. And for an instant, time truly stopped. The ball flew low, dangerously close to Andrada's hand. What would happen if the king failed at the moment of greatest pressure? And why, for the Brazil of 1969, did this goal mean so much more than just a point? In truth, to understand that November of 1969, we must feel the density of the expectation that hung over the king, a pressure perhaps unmatched in the history of sport. After scoring his 909th goal on November 14th against Botafogo, a bizarre drought began. In 3 subsequent matches, the goal refused to materialize. This wasn't merely a delay, it was a societal holding of breath. Brazil, trapped under the iron fist of the AI-5 military dictatorship, looked to football as its primary, and perhaps only, collective emotional outlet. Pelé wasn't just chasing a record, he was carrying the fractured soul of a nation seeking a moment of undisputed global validation, November 19th. Maracanã Stadium, Rio de Janeiro. The stage, a Campeonato Brasileiro match between Santos and Vasco da Gama. This was not just a game, it was a pilgrimage. Over 65,000 paid spectators, and tens of thousands more listening with transistor radios glued to their ears across the country, turning 1969 into a silent, communal vigil. The tension was suffocating. Every time Pelé touched the ball, the sound of the crowd rose, sharp and anxious, only to dissipate in frustrated groans when he failed to convert. He hit the post, he missed near-open goals. Opponent goalkeeper Edgardo Andrada, a stoic Argentine, seemed to transform into an insurmountable wall, delaying the inevitable and, in doing so, amplifying the drama to mythological levels. Then at 78 minutes, the climax. Pelé executes a dazzling move, penetrating the area, and is taken down by the Vasco defender Fernando. Penalty. The referee signals the spot, and in that instant, the massive, chaotic energy of the stadium did not erupt, it compressed. The noise vanished, replaced by a dreadful, profound silence, the single minute that truly stopped Brazil. Pelé retrieves the ball, The burden of 1,000 goals, the history of his career, the hope of a repressed nation, all condensed into the 11 meters separating him from Andrada. He hesitates, takes a breath, and strikes low and hard, deceiving the goalkeeper, who still manages to touch the ball. The net billows. The explosion was immediate and visceral. It wasn't just relief, it was a societal catharsis. Fans, photographers, and journalists flooded the field in seconds, carrying Pelé on their shoulders, drowning him in tears and relief. The king, emotional, made his famous plea for the children of Brazil. It was an iconic scene, captured forever in grainy black and white film. But the question remains, why did this seemingly simple moment, a penalty kick, unleash such a powerful, overwhelming emotional torrent? What hidden currents, political and social, flowed beneath the jubilant surface of that unforgettable night? The hidden currents were the rarefied air of 1969 itself. Brazil lived under the iron fist of Institutional Act No. 5, AI5, the dictatorship at its repressive zenith. The enforced silence in the streets violently contrasted with the deafening noise of state propaganda. The regime aggressively promoted the idea of Brazil, love it or leave it. But to love it, one had to participate in the collective distraction. While the government celebrated the so-called economic miracle, with the GDP growing at rates that would eventually peak near 14% annually, yet brutally concentrating wealth and leaving the majority behind. Diverting attention was a calculated state policy. One could not speak of political dissent, but one had to breathe football. Pelé's 1,000th goal was not merely a sports statistic. It was the ultimate focal point of this mandatory national distraction. He was the allowed god, the only unquestionable point of light in a climate of fear. The nation, seeking escapism from widespread censorship and repression, transferred its entire emotional load onto the solitary figure of the king. The hunt began in October 1969. Santos played an exhaustive schedule, crisscrossing the continent. Every stadium, from Salvador to Buenos Aires, was packed, not just out of love for the team, but from the urgency of witnessing history now. Pelé had reached 998, then 999 goals. And then the machine stalled. The immediate glory was replaced by excruciating agony. In matches against Botafogo and Corinthians, he missed surprisingly simple opportunities. The pressure of 80 million people was no longer elevating him. It was crushing him. The expectation, amplified by state media into a crushing obligation, manifested as visible physical paralysis on the field. The psychological weight transformed the world's greatest player into an anxious, hesitant ghost. The delay stretched the tension for over 2 weeks, turning anticipation into suffocating dread. Every misplaced pass, every saved shot felt like a national betrayal. And in the midst of this stage of hysteria, an unexpected antagonist, or perhaps the last bastion of reality, emerges. Edgardo Andrada, the formidable Argentinian goalkeeper for Vasco da Gama. Andrada was not there to participate in a civic celebration or yield to Brazilian national sentiment. He was there to defend his goal. His motivation was simple professional pride. But in this context, it was an act of profound political defiance. An individual standing firm against the tidal wave of engineered collective desire. This accumulated tension, the political chaos, the insane national expectation, and the stubborn resistance of a single defiant goalkeeper is precisely what transformed a simple penalty kick into the only minute that stopped Brazil. History was preparing to test, to the absolute limit, the resilience of its greatest hero. What happened during those days of relentless anticipation was the pure, distilled definition of pressure, setting the stage for the dramatic confrontation that would soon follow. That insane anticipation materialized the moment Pelé, the personification of Brazilian hope, placed the ball on the penalty spot in the Maracanã on November 19, 1969. The clock read 78 minutes. Maracanã was exploding with 65,000 people, and millions more glued to the radio, all witnessing history. Goalkeeper Andrada on one side, the legend on the other. This was not a dispute over 12 yards. It was a duel between the individual and the expectation of 90 million Brazilians living under a repressive military regime. When the ball found the net, it wasn't just a goal, it was an exorcism. The field invasion was not a simple celebration. It was a human wave that broke the rigidity of the moment. Reporters, cameras, even police officers were swallowed by the euphoria. And here lies the first and most potent legacy. In a country silenced by Institutional Act No. 5, AI5, Pelé's goal became one of the rare moments of unrestricted popular expression. Pelé, in dedicating the achievement to the poor children of Brazil, used his sports megaphone to echo a political and social message that no opposition leader could deliver at that time. That minute not only stopped Brazil, it redefined its most valuable export, the image of a country capable of producing gods. The 1,000th goal was not a statistic. It was a myth, solidifying Brazil as the epicenter of world football for the subsequent decades, elevating the price of its transfers and its global brand. In the years that followed, this specific event was instrumental in boosting national football club revenues by an average of 30%, shifting the narrative from domestic success to global dominance, a blueprint for the modern football economy. Compare that single point of national convergence with our current fragmented reality, where attention dissolves across thousands of screens. On that day, 90% of the media focus was concentrated on one man, one shot. But the true plot twist is not in the goal, but in the near failure. The profound lesson that 1969 taught us is about the weight of imposed perfection. Pelé, the king, the unbeatable, was under such immense pressure that the simplicity of the penalty almost betrayed him. The humanity of that instant, the fear, the tension, proves that the triumph was not merely scoring the goal, but surviving the expectation that it had to be scored. The glory is the overcoming of one's own legend. The 1,000th goal was not the peak of Pelé's career. It was the moment Pelé's career ceased to be his own and became the property of history. And what happened to that legacy when the legend retired and the dictatorship fell? The story of the number 10 jersey and its modern curse remains to be told. But in the silence of the night, after the euphoria emptied Maracanã and Brazil breathed again, the true meaning of that goal emerged. It wasn't just a statistical mark. It wasn't just 1,000. In 1969, under the weight of repression and Institutional Act No. 5, football was one of the people's few emotional outlets. That penalty kick, which almost failed under the pressure of 65,000 witnesses in the stadium and millions on the radio, was a mirror of the Brazilian soul, resilient, shining intensely when a fall was most expected. The profound lesson of that day is not in the score but in the capacity of Pelé, the man, not the myth, to carry the burden of an entire nation and for one single minute convert insane expectation into an explosion of pure history. It was proof that even in moments of greatest political darkness, a cultural event could impose its own truce. The minute that stopped Brazil was a bittersweet reminder. Sport has the temporary power to unite and give a voice, a brief but unforgettable interval of freedom amid the chaos. This was just one of the days that shaped our world. Tomorrow, we will publish another landmark historical event. To not miss it, subscribe now to The Day Everything Changed and turn on notifications. What other day would you like to see featured here? Comment below.